I sentence thee to 3 glimpses into your own soul.
I could do that with my third eye tied behind my back.
Very well. 7 glimpses.
No!
The morality of a... There are no bad people. No matter the wrongs any individual might have committed, they cannot be described as bad. There is no individual that can be holistically described as good or bad. To be clear, actions can be good or bad. You know, you can put a little morality on an action, but not on a person. You could even have a person who has only ever done actions that are bad, but that person would still not be considered bad. A person's actions are not determined by their moral character, but rather their circumstance. Part 1, what are we talking about? We're talking about morality here. So, morality outlines, various goodness and badness, and it can define right and wrong for us. However, something you gotta note about morality is that it's entirely subjective. There's gonna be, perhaps small differences, perhaps very large differences between how different people are going to perceive the goodness or badness of an action. We can't use no science machine to measure out the morality of a thing. We could look at something and we could weigh it out to figure out its mass. That's like an objective measure, but we cannot measure out the morality of something. That's not something that exists in the physical world. It's something that is what we call a social construct. It's something that we as a group, collective, kind of agree on a meaning, and we assign it meaning and we assign it value. Additionally, we also got to draw the difference between the morality of an action and the morality of a person. To say a person is good or bad is to say that, this whole individual person there's some label that measures the level of morality that we can assign to this person. The classic example of this is the religious one. Does this person go to heaven? Does this person go to hell? Whether or not they end up in either of those places is going to be dependent on if they're good or if they're bad. But to say an action is good or bad is to look at it like, something individual, thou shalt not kill. That's a basic one. That's easy peasy. It's saying that the kill an action is bad. I just realized I messed up again. Oh my God. We define these concepts ourselves, and we define value for these concepts ourselves. And the reason we do this is because it's having, moral statements serves us in some way. It gives us some value. I'm going to argue that the morality of actions is both useful and valid. However, the morality of a person is both not very reasonable and is not very useful for us. Part 2, why we can't define a person's morality. Now, if we say, an action could be good or bad, why can we not then say the same thing about a person? That's because it's simply implausible to try to define the morality of a person. What their morality is going to, it's going to be inconsistent over their lifespan. They're going to change over time. That's true for everybody, Additionally, their moral character, quote unquote, might misalign with what their actions, represent. We might try to define someone who has good intentions. They're trying to do good as good, but that could be different from how they act. And also, we get into trouble here where nobody really thinks of themselves as doing bad. They're not, stroking their hands going, oh, I'm time to do something real devilish today, something evil. People aren't doing that. So that gives us a conundrum here where we can't really use their intentions as the only way in which we evaluate their goodness. We got to use their actions as well. As an example, let's start with a little hypothetical here. Imagine someone who is very hateful. They're very sadistic, twisted, dark mind, their whole life they have nothing but contempt for humanity. They're plotting some evil scheme. They're gonna nuclear bomb the whole world. That's what they're thinking about their whole life. However, they don't act on it ever because they're saving up for their grand plan. But then they die right beforehand. So they never get to do anything. In their whole life, the actions were perfectly neutral. They didn't really do anything. But they definitely had evil intent. They were someone who, most would probably intuitively feel in their stomach, damn, that's probably a bad dude. They wanted to, end humanity. That's pretty evil. But ultimately, their actions were neutral. They didn't have any significance at all. So it could be a little tricky to try to define their morality here. Now let's look at the like the opposite sort of example. Someone who has pure intentions. They're of golden heart. They really want to do good, and they want to, everyone around them, they wish to lift them up. They wish to do good in all of their intentions. However, they're tragically dumb. They constantly mess up. Every time that they try to help someone around them, they actually hurt them in some way, shape, or form. They constantly harm those around them, and all of their actions can be looked at as bad. Like they're constantly hurting everyone around them. But really, in the inside, they're just trying to do good. So this is someone who is like perhaps of like good moral character, where their intentions are seemingly good, but the results, their actions, are all bad. So now it's like, okay, well, you might struggle to say intuitively like, oh yeah, this person's good because they're only hurting everyone around them. But also, it seems like if they're of good heart, of good nature, that might suggest that they are of some goodness. Now we're just stuck at an impasse here with these two examples. No one can really say, is this person good or is this person bad, or either the two people. You could be someone who tends to think that their intentions matters more, or that their actions matters more. You can have either opinion. It's going to be subjective, and that's fine. But I think it goes a little bit beyond just being subjective. I think on an individual level, you would struggle to come up with like a concrete and like consistent answer here, where you would say that you have like some distinct form of analysis in which you can determine that one of these people is good and one of them is bad. I think that you would struggle to do that. I think that you wouldn't really be able to do that. Now, another thing to consider is that everybody makes mistakes. You have made a mistake. Everybody has made a mistake at least once in their life. That's something that's pretty common. You can't escape it. Everyone messes up. That's human nature. So we're gonna do another hypothetical here. Imagine somebody who lives their whole life doing kind of nothing. They very morally neutral person in their actions and their intentions. They're just living life. Now they get to a point in their life where they come across a severe moral conundrum. Maybe it's like some crazy trolley problem or something that's presented in front of them. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that they have this moral question that they have to answer. Let's say there's one option that's clearly good and one option that's clearly bad. Now let's say they picked the bad option. They made a little bit of a mistake here. They weren't thinking it through all the way. They were a little bit careless. Maybe they're just kind of dumb and they just messed it up. They made a mistake, but they made a bad option. They've also done nothing else for the rest of their life. And now imagine right after this, they die. They never get another shot at it. They only ever made one little moral decision in their whole life, and they picked a bad outcome. Now this person has only ever done bad actions or neutral actions, and they picked the bad one. And it was due to a mistake. So would you really say that like, oh, that's their fault? They should have been more careful. They are evil for making the mistake. I don't think so. I think most people would feel that, understanding that everyone makes mistakes. If someone does make a mistake and it ends up being like a morally bad outcome, that's not really like, they made a mistake. There's some level of forgiveness there. You don't recognize that this person is bad because they messed up. That's not what we're thinking here. I don't think anyone would really feel that. If you do, let me know though. But you cannot say that someone is bad for making a mistake. People will always do that. People's judgments are always clouded. Their minds are always in disarray. And we just cannot expect it to do good every single time. Everyone will mess up and do a little bit of bad here and there. Now, if it's just a matter of like, oh, did you have the more opportunities to do good? Then it's easier to do good. But if you only had one shot, one opportunity, and you blew it, that doesn't make you bad. Okay, so a different train of thought, but we're going with more hypotheticals here. So imagine a child, a little kid. They're growing up and they bully everyone around them. They're a huge little scumbag. This little kid's the devil. Just, whatever bad shit a kid could do. Picture this. Now picture he grows up. He learns the error of his ways. He was being foolish in the past. He was just a kid. He repents for his actions in some way. He feels guilt, remorse, and changes the way that he acts for the rest of his life. Now he's good. So, most people would feel like, okay, he's redeemed himself. He's good, Now, imagine that same kid, right before growing up, he dies in an accident. Some tragic occurrence occurs. He dies. No chance to redeem himself. This kid has only ever done wrong, has only ever harmed people around him, has only ever bullied people. Now, would you say that this kid is bad? Well, he's only ever done bad, and he's only ever had bad intentions. But then it kind of feels a little bit silly to say that, oh, he would have been good if he had the opportunity to redeem himself. So ultimately here, you're looking at a question of like, oh, it might actually boil down to circumstance a little bit more here, where the goodness of this individual, the child / future adult, their goodness is dependent on whether or not they had the opportunity to do good. And that's key there. Now, one last hypothetical, example person, because I asked a few people about this video topic, and one of the most extreme examples that did come up pretty often when trying to picture a bad person. People would often come up with someone with like a severe case of mental illness, like they got psychosis, psychopathy, sociopathy, every single one you can imagine, and they're just someone who does evil. They're like a TV show villain that just takes pleasure in destroying the lives of those around them. You could picture this type of person, and most people would say like, okay, that maybe that person is bad. They're genetically encoded to do bad. They can't even fathom the thought of doing good. So, this person's got to be bad, right? And they've only never done bad. But what if you suppose that there is some means of treating this person? Maybe it doesn't exist now, but in the future, it's probably pretty plausible that we'd have some sort of treatment that would help for all of these, mental illnesses. Now, if you could have treatment for this type of person, then they could become good, and they would become good. So what we're seeing here is it's yet again boiling down to circumstance. They're only bad because they don't have access to this hypothetical treatment. If they did have it, they'd be good. And it's not really their fault that they don't have this treatment. It's not their fault that they're, mentally ill. And it's not their fault that they're thinking bad thoughts. So how can we say that they're responsible for the badness that they exude? How can we say that they are themselves bad? Part 4, determinism. So I'm going to outline an argument for determinism here. It's pretty simple. I'm not going to go too in depth just because this argument does rely on one premise that I think a lot of people in the audience might not, agree with. So it's not like the cornerstone of my argument, but it's kind of the cornerstone of my beliefs. So I figured I'd bring it up here. It makes sense. So what is determinism real quick? It's the idea that our actions are predetermined. That, what we do is calculable at some point. So premise 1, our minds / conscious experience manifests from our brain. What does that mean? So we're saying that our being is physical. All of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our thinking manifest from the machinery that is in our heads here. We got our brain and it's doing a bunch of clockwork and whatever it's doing. And then our experience and thoughts and decisions are derived from whatever machinery is having. Now, importantly, we don't have a soul or anything guiding us. We're not there's not some spiritual element to ourselves that is guiding us. And that's sort of a cornerstone of my feeling, just because I don't feel like we have evidence for this type of thing, so I just don't tend to believe it. It could be the case that it is true. Number 2, everything within the physical world operates under some set of rules, the laws of physics. So this we know, there's physical items and objects in the world. Physics is working on them. I'm pushing my mouse around. That's the physics happening. Those are the rules. It's not going to do something crazy where I tap my mouse and then it ends up in China. That's not going to happen. There's rules to explain the exact pathways in which it takes. Using these rules, we can predict the outcome of any event. So the classic example, roll a ball down a hill. It's going down the hill. We can do the math and figure out exactly where it's going to end up. You'll have to account for every variable, all the little blades of grass and, the bumps in the road and all that. But if we account for all of it, we can still figure out exactly where it's going to show up. So if we can predict the outcome of any event, then we should be able to predict the outcome of any person's decision-making process. Because our brain is physical, it's under the laws of physics. If we had the super mega computer, we could calculate what our brain is going to do, given some input and then its output. If we could simulate it, we'd be able to figure out what it would do. And so, conclusion here, we are not making decisions for ourselves, as they are predetermined. The ball rolling down the hill, we know where it's going to end up. Someone asks you, do you want a sandwich today or pasta today? 20 years ago when I decided I like sandwiches more than I like pasta, that event, that knowing that piece of information, we can know that I'm going to pick sandwiches. They're simply better than pasta in most circumstances. Now, importantly, the point to take away from this is that if every action of ours is predetermined, how can we have responsibility for our actions? Because we aren't even really the ones choosing, How can we even say that we are responsible? Part 5. We aren't responsible. We do not have responsibility for our actions. Our actions are guided by circumstance and, chance. This does not, however, mean that we are free from repercussions. A lack of responsibility does not mean a lack of repercussions. We need to have negative reinforcement for bad actions to course correct. I'm bothering my buddy here. I'm annoying the hell out of him. I'm poking him in the side. He needs to turn to me and go, "Hey, bro, knock that off. I'm gonna stop being friends with you. You're pissing me off." And then I'll go, "Man, that really, I didn't like hearing him say that. So I'm gonna stop poking him." Maybe I was poking him in the beginning just through, God made me that way to poke him. But he then made me the other way where I don't want to poke him because I don't want to lose him as a friend. You even have the extreme examples where someone's doing something really bad and you need to be like, okay, well, you need to go into the jail because, one, we want you to reflect on your actions and hopefully not do that again. And two, we don't have a way of stopping you from doing it again. So we just kind of got to put you somewhere where we're sure that you're not going to kill us. When we are punishing someone for some bad action, we're punishing them for some bad action, not for being bad themselves. Part 6. So why should we even try and do good if we cannot be good? Life is not about you being good or being bad in totality. We try to do good because we like to feel good about our actions. And we avoid doing bad actions because we don't want to feel bad about ourselves. We don't want to be like, "Oh man, that was really, I feel kind of icky. I shouldn't have done that. I feel guilty." We have our own little mental systems that we might, cook up to try to define exactly what it is to do good or what it is exactly to do bad. Some of us kind of just guided by intuition, and that can work pretty good too. But we just got to have some sort of system for, guiding us to make decisions. We got to make sure that we try to feel good about ourselves and feel good about our actions and not feel bad about our actions. We should just be doing good because there is joy to be had in, doing something good. You ever been at the grocery store and then there's that old lady who's like, "Oh, can you help me get this thing from the top shelf?" And then you take it down for her and you feel really good about yourself. You help that old lady out. It just feels nice to do something nice. That's just true. And we're all going to feel that way unless something's wrong with you, of course, just because we are genetically encoded to do so. We're encoded to empathize, to socialize, and to just love the people around us. We're a very communal species, and it suits us to feel good about being good to those around us. Part 7, for the religious. This section I'm going to address some of the religious people in the audience, not all of them, because there's actually a lot of religions, and there's even not even just a lot of religions. Even within one religion, there's a billion subsects that all disagree about how things are supposed to work and how things are. So I can't address all of them. I'm going to just broadly address the principle that there is, an afterlife that has some good end and some bad end. And you are going to be sent to one of those ends based off of how good or bad you have been in your mortal life. These specific religions will have this belief that if you're good, you'll go to, suffer some great experience for eternity. But if you're bad, boom, eternal suffering. Well, we got a problem here. The problem is that God here is compelling you to act in some way. If someone puts a gun to your head and says, "You got to do the dishes," and, you do the dishes, did you even really do the dishes? Did you choose to do that? Was that something that you felt strongly about? If I live my life under the rules that are prescribed to me by God, only because I don't want to suffer in hell for an eternity, does that make me good? Even if my intentions, we could go back to the intentions thing, where if I'm a truly sinister, devilish dude, I have bad thoughts all the time, but I'm going to do good because I don't want to go to hell, then, maybe that would make me good. It depends on maybe your religion, perhaps. However, I don't think that if you're being compelled to act in some way, I don't think that really reflects who you are or what you would do otherwise. Like, let's say, the opposite example where, someone points a gun to your head and they go, hey, you gotta go steal something from that store or else I'm gonna kill you. And then, you go and steal the thing from the store because you don't want to die. No one wants to die. So you stole the thing. Now that's a conventionally bad action, but no one would really say that you're responsible for said bad action because you were made to do it. So if it's the case that you are not bad for stealing the thing that you were made to do, then would it not also be the case that you're not good for, following the rules of the land, because otherwise you get sent to hell for an eternity? So for me, it just doesn't really make sense to be able to say someone is good for doing the thing that they had to do under threat, or saying someone that is, oh, you're not bad because you didn't do the bad thing that you were, threatened to not do. Like, it just doesn't strike at what intuitively goodness feels like to me. Because it's like, it's a similar thing to like the determinism thing where you're not really responsible because, the actions that you are following are, it's just the course of life and the path that you're on, that you're determined to be on ahead of time. If you do something bad, you're not really responsible for it. And the same thing here, where it's like, if you do something good, you're not really responsible for it because you were made to do it. God said, I wouldn't consider that a goodness. Part 8, why it is bad to view others as good or bad. So my argument up to this point has basically just been, it's wishy-washy. You can't really define someone as good or bad just because it doesn't really make sense. You can't really, it just doesn't feel right, pretty much. That's kind of the cornerstone of the argument. But this is the moral imperative argument. I think that trying to define people as good or as bad, I think is actively harmful. By viewing and labeling an individual as evil, we are not only failing them, but we are also failing ourselves here. You got to consider that we are fallible. We like earlier I said, we make mistakes. If you cast someone as evil, the odds are you might be wrong. In fact, you're more than likely wrong that this person probably not evil. And it can branch out even further, where if you label someone as evil, then you probably think that the stuff that they say, you would assume it to be evil as well. And then you might even go a step further and assume that the other people who say similar things are also evil. Or you might go the other way and say, oh, this person's evil, so the people that they associate are probably evil. Regardless, if you do either of those two things, then you're going to very quickly end up with half the damn world being evil. You're going to view yourself as, opponents to so many different people. But everyone is just trying to do their own thing. Everyone's trying to do good. They might just be wrong or whatever. It's very important that if someone believes something horrific or evil, you need to understand in your mind that they are not evil as a person. They are just misguided, wrong, dumb, ignorant, whatever other word you need to use that is not evil. Now, you might be like, that's not a very important distinction. Whatever. It doesn't matter if they're evil or if they're dumb. But here's why it matters. Most people would agree that you should not harm somebody just because they are dumb. However, most people would agree that it is acceptable to harm someone because they're evil. The more people you view as evil, the more people that you, in your mind, believe, it's okay if harm befalls this person, or this person's not even worth moral consideration. I can do whatever I want to them because they're evil. No action is wrong against someone who is themselves wrong. Additionally, the more people that we view as evil, the more we wish harm on those like around us. And here's where it gets tricky. This is like a classic, situation where if I believe this person across the room is evil, and I'm like, yeah, that person sucks. That person's evil. They're horrible. People, I don't care what happens to them. You're spitting all this bad rhetoric about this person. This person is going to hear them and be like, damn, this person thinks it's okay to hurt me. This person thinks it's okay to do bad things to me. That person must be evil. So now they think that you're evil. Now you guys both think each other are evil, and both of you think that some level of violence is acceptable against each other. It's not that implausible to assume that one of them is going to act in a way that is morally reprehensible because, you guys both hate each other and think that each other is evil. By having your own anxieties about whether or not someone else is evil, you are going to manifest their evilness. You are going to make them evil in your world because they're going to see you as a threat. You're manifesting your own anxieties. It's classic. It's like the exactly what you run from, you end up chasing. Like Tyler the Creator song. Good song. Part 9, a warning. So, given all that I've said, I just want to be clear that if someone has personally harmed you or done something wrong to you as an individual, you do not need to forgive this person. You do not need to go, oh, everyone is okay. Nobody is evil, so I must forgive this person and, accept them for who they are. No. If you are in an abusive relationship and this person is actively harming you, you can go in your mind and be like, oh, well, they're not really bad. I understand that there's a lot of things that happen in their life that have resulted in them acting this way. You can empathize with them, but also you've got to get the hell out of there. You need to, put some distance between you and someone who might be harming you. I'm not teaching people, I'm not telling y'all to be a saint. I'm not saying that. Nobody can really do that. What I am saying is that you should just try to look through the lens of okay, people should not be defined by their past actions. Just because you have done wrong does not mean you are bad. It just means that you have done bad in the past. It does not mean that you cannot then do good in the future. You have to be able to forgive yourself to be able to do better, and you cannot give up on yourself. You can do good regardless of what you've done in the past. You are not bad. You are not a bad person. Be good, be well. See y'all in the next one.
They blame my newfound crystal skull for all the eerie and even horrible things happening in town. Even murder, bad juju. But it's not capable of anything except being so beautiful.